The United States Air Force has tried to retire the A-10 Warthog 4 separate times, 4 official budget proposals, 4 congressional hearings. 4 times the most powerful Air Force in human history sat across a table and argued that this aircraft is ugly, slow, and older than most of the pilots who fly it. Every single time, the people who actually fight America's wars stood up and said no. This is a story about a weapon so perfectly designed for the reality of ground combat that 50 years of technological advancement has produced exactly 0 aircraft capable of replacing it. To understand what the A-10 is, you first have to understand what the Air Force thought war would look like in 1972 when the design was finalized. The only answer was close air support aircraft that could fly low, slow, and directly over the battlefield, finding and destroying tanks before they overwhelmed NATO lines. The Air Force's existing jets were designed for speed and altitude. The F-4 Phantom could break the sound barrier. It could also barely see a tank from the altitude it needed to survive ground fire, and its targeting systems were built for air-to-air combat, not hunting armor in a tree line. What the Army wanted, and what the Air Force deeply resented being told to build, was something fundamentally different. An aircraft that could absorb punishment, that could fly slow enough for a pilot to actually identify a target with their own eyes, that could carry enough ordnance to devastate an armored column and then come back and do it again. Fairchild Republic won the contract. What they designed was not elegant. It was not fast. The Air Force internally referred to it as a waste of resources. What it was purpose-built for a single mission with a level of engineering commitment that bordered on obsessive. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was built around one component, not the engine, not the airframe, but the gun. The GAU-8 Avenger rotary cannon sits at the absolute center of the A-10's design philosophy, and understanding it explains everything about why this aircraft exists and why nothing has replaced it. The GAU-8 fires 30mm rounds at 3,900 rounds per minute. Each depleted uranium armor-piercing round leaves the barrel at 3,400 feet per second, carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through the top armor of a main battle tank. The gun is so large, so heavy, and generates such extreme recoil forces that Fairchild Republic built the entire aircraft around it. The nose gear sits offset to the left, so the centerline barrel of the gun aligns perfectly with the aircraft's centerline. The 2 engines are mounted high and wide specifically to keep their intake and exhaust away from the cannon's gas dispersion during firing. Even the cockpit is positioned behind and above the gun. The pilot looks over it rather than around it. When the GAU-8 fires, the recoil force is equivalent to the thrust of one of the A-10's engines. The aircraft actually decelerates when the trigger is held. In the original acceptance tests, Air Force officials stood behind the aircraft at distance while it fired. The sound was described as a tearing groan rather than a conventional gun report. Ground troops learned to recognize that sound instantly. But here is what the specifications miss entirely. The GAU-8 is terrifying to the people on the receiving end in a way that statistics cannot capture. In the Gulf War, Iraqi tank crews abandoned fully operational vehicles the moment they heard an A-10 overhead. Not because of the gun's accuracy, because of the sound. The psychological effect of a weapon that announces its presence with that specific noise, that specific vibration, proved as tactically decisive as the actual rounds. The gun is the weapon. The aircraft is the survival system that keeps returning it to the battlefield. The A-10's airframe was designed from first principles around one assumption: it will be hit. Not might be hit, will be hit. Every design decision flows from that premise. The cockpit is enclosed in a titanium bathtub, a welded shell of armor plate between 1.5 and 3.8 centimeters thick that surrounds the pilot on all sides. This tub weighs 1,200 pounds and is designed to withstand direct hits from 23mm cannon rounds, the standard caliber of Soviet anti-aircraft weapons in 1972. The windscreen is rated to withstand bird strikes at 300 knots and can absorb small arms fire without penetrating. The flight control system has complete manual backup for every surface. If every hydraulic line in the aircraft is severed, a scenario that would kill any other aircraft immediately, the A-10's pilot can still control the aircraft through mechanical cable backup systems and land it. The dual engines are mounted specifically so that losing one does not affect the thrust vector of the other. The fuel system is foam-filled and self-sealing. The landing gear is designed so that if hydraulics fail completely, gravity and airspeed alone will extend it. In a declared emergency, the aircraft can land on any reasonably flat surface with no systems functioning. In Iraq and Afghanistan, A-10s returned to base with one engine destroyed, with holes in the wing large enough for a person to stand in, with control surfaces shredded and hydraulic fluid spraying from severed lines, and they landed. Their pilots walked away. Maintenance crews patched them and flew them again within days. Soldiers in Kandahar gave the A-10 a name they gave no other aircraft. They called it the Guardian Angel. That name did not come from a briefing room. It came from men who were being overrun. In 2024, the Air Force proposed once again to retire the A-10 fleet by 2029 as part of its transition to the F-35 and eventual F-47 program. Congress blocked the full retirement timeline for the fourth time. The compromise currently in place phases out the oldest airframes while keeping the most recently upgraded Block II aircraft operational through at least 2030, with multiple congressional voices actively pushing for extension beyond that date. The Air Force's argument is consistent and coherent. It cannot afford to maintain an aircraft optimized for threats that no longer define its primary mission. Every dollar spent keeping the A-10 operational is a dollar not spent on the systems needed to fight China. That argument is strategically sound. It is also, as four separate Congresses have decided, not the whole story. That is not cynicism. That is the genuine institutional dilemma the A-10 represents. The aircraft does things nothing else can do, in environments that are not the environments the Air Force is building for. Both of those things are true simultaneously. The question is not which truth is correct, it is which truth costs more to ignore.